The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. 2,000 representatives from across the known galaxy sat in their designated sections, each species separated by atmospheric barriers suited to their biology. At the center podium, Ambassador Velthar of the Zenthari Empire held up a holographic display showing a small blue planet. "This is Earth," Velthar announced, his 3 eyes scanning the assembled crowd. "Our scout ships have been observing this world for the past 50 cycles. What we have discovered is deeply troubling." The hologram shifted to show images of mushroom clouds rising over cities. Gasps echoed through the chamber as translation devices converted the sound into appropriate expressions of shock for each species. "These creatures," Velthar continued, "have discovered atomic energy, but instead of using it for advancement, they immediately weaponized it. Then they used these weapons against their own kind, not once but twice, in the same planetary cycle." A representative from the Pelgorian Confederacy raised a tentacle. "Surely this is not unusual for pre-contact species. Many civilizations go through destructive phases." Velthar's mandibles clicked in disagreement. "It gets worse. These humans, as they call themselves, have divided their single planet into nearly 200 separate tribal territories. They wage constant war against each other over invisible lines on maps, ancient texts, and access to resources they could easily share." The hologram changed again, showing deforested lands, polluted oceans, and cities choked with smog. "They are destroying their own biosphere, the planet that gave them life, and they poison it without hesitation. Our analysts predict they will render their world uninhabitable within 200 cycles if they continue this behavior." Chancellor Kreenak, an ancient being from the core worlds, spoke in a voice that resonated through every translator. "What do you propose, Ambassador?" "Quarantine," Velthar said firmly. "We classify Earth as a prohibited world. No contact, no trade, no interference. We let them destroy themselves as they clearly intend to do. Why waste resources on a species that cannot even stop fighting its own kind, long enough to achieve basic planetary unity?" The vote was called. Of the 2,000 representatives present, 1,847 voted in favor of quarantine. Only 3 voted against. Earth was officially marked as a species to be ignored. The decades rolled past. Different species sent updated reports to the Council archives, but few bothered to read them. The Chromath sent a report 70 cycles after the initial quarantine. Their long-range scanners had detected something unusual. The humans had gone from bronze tools to spaceflight in less than 5,000 cycles. For comparison, the Chromath had taken 40,000 cycles to achieve the same progress. The report noted this was statistically improbable and potentially concerning. It was filed away without comment. 50 cycles later, the Sindari submitted their observations. Despite facing extinction-level threats like climate change, asteroid impacts, and pandemic diseases, the humans still could not unify their governments. The Sindari anthropologists noted this with academic confusion. Every other species in the galaxy had unified when facing existential threats. It was basic survival instinct. But humans seemed to operate differently. They would cooperate briefly during crises, then immediately return to fighting each other once the danger passed. The Sindari concluded that humanity would likely destroy itself before achieving interstellar capability. Their report joined the others in the forgotten archives. The Pelgorians, however, sent a different kind of report. Their observers had been studying human behavior more closely, and what they found disturbed them. Humans had a strange tendency to form emotional bonds with creatures that should be their predators. They domesticated wolves, keeping them as companions. They treated small predatory felines as family members. Some humans even formed attachments to reptiles and arachnids. But more concerning was human endurance. Pelgorian biologists noted that humans were persistence hunters. On their high-gravity world, humans had evolved to simply outlast their prey. They could run for days without stopping. They could survive in temperature ranges that would kill most species. They could eat an astonishing variety of foods, including substances that were toxic to nearly every other sapient species. These creatures are pursuit predators on a death world, the Pelgorian report concluded. They evolved to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They bond with other predators as pack members. They survived on a planet that regularly tried to kill them with ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, and extinction event asteroid impacts. Recommend continued observation and extreme caution. This report caused a brief stir in the council. A debate was held. Some representatives argued that perhaps the quarantine should be reconsidered. Perhaps humanity should be contacted, studied, maybe even guided toward civilization. But the majority disagreed. One representative from the Zarthan hegemony stood and addressed the council with contempt, clear in his voice. They are primitives who wage war over ancient superstitions. They destroy their own habitat. They cannot achieve unity. They are clearly inferior beings who will collapse under the weight of their own violence. Why should the council waste time on such creatures? Let them die in their own filth, the council agreed. The vote was 847 to maintain the quarantine, with only 3 representatives voting for reconsideration. As the council moved on to discuss trade agreements and border disputes, none of them noticed a small detail in the Pelgorian report. Human technology was not just advancing quickly, it was accelerating. The gap between their achievements was shrinking exponentially. Bronze to iron had taken 1,000 cycles. Iron to steam power, 500 cycles. Steam to atomic energy, barely 100 cycles. Atomic to early spaceflight, a mere 50 cycles. The galaxy ignored Earth, they dismissed every warning. They saw only a fractured species of primitives on a backwater world. They would learn their mistake. But by then, it would be far too late to do anything about it. Commander Zaltek of the Zarthan hegemony watched Earth grow larger on his view screen and felt nothing but contempt. 50 cycles had passed since the council's quarantine vote, and he had grown tired of following outdated rules made by cowards. This planet is rich with resources, he told his bridge crew. Rare metals, water, biodiversity, and it's guarded by primitives who still fight with chemical propellants. We will take what we want, and the council can complain to empty space. His fleet consisted of 12 warships, each carrying 1,000 soldiers, more than enough to subjugate a divided world of primitives. The Zarthan had conquered 43 worlds in the past 3 centuries. Earth would be number 44. The fleet entered Earth's orbit in the middle of their night cycle. Zaltek broadcast his message in multiple human languages, his translator making his words understood across the planet. Humans of Earth, the Zarthan hegemony claims this world. You will surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. We offer you a choice. Serve us and live, or resist and die. He expected panic, chaos, maybe a few primitive missiles that his shields would easily deflect. What he got instead was silence for exactly 1 hour. Then every screen on his bridge lit up with the same image. A human woman sitting at a desk, wearing what appeared to be formal clothing. This is Secretary General Chen of the United Earth Government, she said calmly. We accept your terms. Humanity surrenders. We ask only that you do not harm our civilians. We will transmit landing coordinates for your forces. Zaltek blinked in surprise. He had expected at least some resistance. This was too easy. His tactical officer voiced the concern they all felt. Commander, this could be a trap. They have no weapons that can harm us, Zaltek replied. Land the troops. Begin the occupation. The Zarthan forces landed in 20 major cities across Earth. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Sydney. Millions of humans watched as the alien soldiers marched through their streets, establishing control points and setting up communication arrays. For exactly 72 hours, humanity remained peaceful. The Zarthan soldiers relaxed. This was the easiest conquest in their history. Some of them even began to feel sorry for these pathetic creatures who surrendered so quickly. Then the attacks began. It started small. A Zarthan patrol in Chicago disappeared. 20 soldiers gone without a trace. The commander sent a squad to investigate. They found the bodies in a subway tunnel, killed with their own weapons. Security footage showed humans emerging from the shadows, moving with coordinated precision. They took the weapons and vanished back into the tunnels. In Moscow, a supply depot exploded. In Tokyo, a command center's computer systems were infected with a virus that took days to purge. In Cairo, snipers picked off soldiers from buildings, then disappeared into crowds of civilians before backup could arrive. The humans, it turned out, had been preparing for this moment since the first Zarthan ship entered their sensor range 3 weeks earlier. They had studied every piece of data they could gather. They had planned, and now they were executing a strategy that the Zarthan had never encountered before. The Zarthan called it terrorism. The humans called it asymmetric warfare. Human fighters never attacked where the Zarthan were strong. They hit supply lines, communication relays, isolated patrols. They used improvised explosives made from common chemicals. They hacked Zarthan systems using weaknesses in their code. They turned the urban environments into mazes where every corner could hide an ambush. Worse, the humans used psychological warfare. They broadcast videos showing Zarthan soldiers being defeated. They spread rumors that made the occupiers paranoid. They made the soldiers afraid to sleep, afraid to patrol, afraid to be alone. Commander Zalthek requested reinforcements. The hegemony sent 4 more warships. But the humans had learned something from captured equipment. They understood Zarthan technology now. 6 months after the invasion began, a Zarthan supply ship on a routine flight from orbit to the surface received an emergency distress call. A human city was under attack by rebels, and the local garrison needed immediate evacuation. The supply ship diverted to assist. It was a trap. The garrison was human soldiers wearing captured Zarthan armor. As the supply ship landed, 200 humans stormed aboard. The crew fought back, but they were trained for ship operations, not close combat. Within minutes, the ship was captured. 30 humans died in the assault. The survivors didn't care. They had a spaceship. The humans didn't try to fly the captured ship to orbit. They knew they would be shot down. Instead, they tore it apart. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, studying every system, every component, every line of code. They learned how the faster-than-light drive worked. They learned how the weapon systems operated. They learned how to build their own. The Zarthan realized too late what was happening. They tried to destroy the captured ship with orbital bombardment, but the humans had moved it underground piece by piece. They tried to jam human communications, but humans simply switched to old-fashioned radio and even physical messengers. They tried to execute hostages, which only made the resistance more fierce. 12 months after the invasion, Commander Zaltek stood on his bridge and faced a reality he never thought possible. His occupation force was down to 40% strength. Human attacks were increasing in frequency and sophistication. His soldiers were demoralized, afraid, and begging to leave this nightmare world. Then his sensors detected something that made his blood cold. 3 ships were rising from Earth's surface. Human-built ships using reverse-engineered Zarthan technology combined with human engineering. They were crude, unrefined, and shouldn't have been able to fly. But they did fly, and they were armed. The brief space battle that followed was chaos. The human ships couldn't match Zarthan firepower, but they didn't try to. Instead, they rammed. One human ship, crewed by volunteers who knew they wouldn't survive, crashed directly into a Zarthan warship's engine core. Both ships exploded. The humans counted it as a victory. Zalthek gave the order to retreat. His fleet, reduced to 4 operational warships from the original 12, fled Earth's system. Behind them, they left thousands of dead Zarthan soldiers, millions of dead humans, and a species that had just learned it could fight the stars. The Galactic Council received Zaltek's report with disbelief. A representative from the Chromath Collective spoke what many were thinking. The Zarthan are known warriors. How could primitives defeat them? Zalthek, stripped of his rank and facing trial, had answered simply, because they don't fight to win. They fight to survive, and nothing in this galaxy is more dangerous than a species fighting for survival. The Council voted to maintain the quarantine. They convinced themselves this was a Zarthan failure, not a human victory. They chose once again to ignore the warning. Earth began building ships. Humanity had tasted the stars, and now nothing would stop them from reaching out and taking their place among them. 20 years after the Zarthan invasion, the Galactic Council's long-range sensors detected something unusual. Human ships were colonizing worlds in the Outer Rim territories. But these weren't the pleasant garden worlds that most species preferred. These were death worlds that had been surveyed and rejected as worthless. Kepler 442b had gravity twice Earth's standard. The atmosphere was dense with sulfur compounds. Surface temperatures swung from boiling to freezing within a single rotation. The Council had marked it as uninhabitable. Humans built a colony there and called it New Shenzhen. Within 5 years, 3 million humans lived there, mining rare elements from the planet's crust. Proxima Centauri b was tidally locked, one side always burning under its red sun, the other frozen in eternal darkness. The Council saw no value in such a world. Humans built their cities in the twilight zone between fire and ice. They called it Haven, and it became a major shipbuilding center. Gliese 667cc was bathed in radiation that would give most species fatal doses within hours. Humans engineered treatments for radiation sickness and built underground cities. They harvested the radiation itself as a power source. They named it Prometheus. Council observers watched with academic confusion. Why were humans choosing the hardest possible worlds to colonize? Any other species would have selected comfortable planets with breathable atmospheres and reasonable gravity, but humans seem to prefer challenges. They are terraforming, a Chromath scientist reported to the Council, but not in any way we understand. They are not changing the planets to suit themselves. They are changing themselves to suit the planets. Genetic modifications, cybernetic enhancements, specialized training from childhood. They are adapting to environments that would kill us. The Council discussed this development and concluded it was not a threat. These worlds were far from any important trade routes. They had no strategic value. Let the humans play in their backwater territories. As long as they stayed away from civilized space, there was no problem. Then human diplomats requested an audience with the Council. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped into the Council chambers with a delegation of 12 humans. She wore a simple blue suit and carried no weapons. Her team included scientists, merchants, and a military advisor in dress uniform. They approached the central podium where 2,000 alien species watched with various expressions of curiosity and contempt. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. Humanity requests admission to this body. We wish to join the community of spacefaring species. We offer our technology, our resources, and our friendship. Chancellor Krenak, who had presided over the original quarantine vote decades ago, regarded the humans with his ancient eyes. You represent a species that cannot even unify its own planet. You have over 150 separate nations. You wage wars among yourselves. You nearly destroyed your own biosphere. Why should we allow such a fractured and violent species into our peaceful community? Sarah had expected this response. It's true that humanity governs itself through many nations rather than one world government. But we have achieved something perhaps more valuable: cooperation without uniformity. Our nations maintain their cultures, their identities, their independence, yet we work together when it matters. We ask only for the same consideration you give to any sovereign species. A Zarthan representative, still bitter about their failed invasion, stood and pointed an accusatory appendage at Sarah. You are a warrior species. You killed thousands of our soldiers using terrorist tactics. You cannot be trusted. Sarah turned to face the Zarthan directly. You invaded our world without provocation. You demanded our surrender. We did what any species would do when facing extinction. We fought back. If that makes us warriors, then what does unprovoked invasion make you? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported humanity's request. Others, particularly those allied with the Zarthan, opposed it vehemently. After 6 hours of debate, the vote was called. Humanity's admission to the Galactic Council was denied by a margin of 300 votes. Sarah accepted the decision with grace. We thank the Council for their consideration. We will continue to respect your laws and borders. Perhaps in time we can prove ourselves worthy of membership. As the human delegation left, many Council members felt satisfied. The primitives had been put in their place. The civilized order was maintained. What the Council didn't know was that Sarah's real mission had nothing to do with Council membership. Humanity had learned from the Zarthan invasion that the galaxy was not safe. The Council might maintain peace among its members, but it couldn't protect everyone. And the Council's peace came at a price. Smaller species, less powerful civilizations, were often exploited or ignored. Human merchant ships began appearing in systems the Council considered unimportant. They traded with species that had been classified as primitive or pre-contact. The humans didn't follow Council protocols. They shared technology freely. They offered medical assistance without demanding anything in return. They treated these smaller species as equals rather than subjects. The Vextari were a species of insectoid traders who operated on the fringes of Council space. They had been denied Council membership because their technology was considered insufficient. Humans began trading with them, exchanging medical advances for information about Council politics and military deployments. The Korlani were aquatic beings who lived in the asteroid belts, harvesting ice and minerals. The Council barely acknowledged their existence. Humans built trade stations near their habitats and established regular commerce. The Corlani began sharing detailed maps of Council shipping routes. The Pelgorians had always been junior members of the Council, their scientific discoveries often overlooked. A human researcher named Dr. James Chen partnered with a Pelgorian scientist called Kriath on a joint study of quantum mechanics. Over months of collaboration, they became genuine friends. One evening, as they shared drinks compatible with both their biologies, Kriath asked the question that had been troubling him. "James, why are your people building so many ships? We count over 3,000 vessels in human space. That's more than most Council species have. And your colonies are all on defensive worlds, easily fortified. What are you preparing for?" James looked at his friend for a long moment before answering. "The Zarthan ignored the Council's laws and invaded us. The Council did nothing to help us. We learned that we cannot rely on others for our survival. So we prepare, we build, we train, we make alliances with species the Council ignores. Because next time someone comes for us or for our friends, we'll be ready." "But you requested Council membership," Kriath said, confused. "Why ask to join if you don't trust them?" James smiled. "We wanted to see what they would say. We wanted to measure their response. Now we know where we stand. Outside their system, but not against it. At least not yet." Kriath felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. He had studied humanity for years, but in that moment he truly understood. Humans weren't preparing for peace. They were preparing for war. Not an immediate war, not an aggressive war, but a defensive war against any future threat. They were building an empire not of conquest but of mutual protection. "You're creating an alliance," Kriath realized, outside the Council's control. "All these species you're helping, they'll stand with you if conflict comes." "We prefer to call it friendship," James replied. "But yes, if necessary, we'll stand together. The galaxy ignored our warnings about what happens when you corner a dangerous species. Soon they'll learn what happens when you ignore a dangerous species that has friends." Human ships continued their quiet expansion. Human traders mapped every Council military installation under the guise of commercial operations. Human scientists cataloged every weakness in Council technology. Human diplomats built a network of allies among species that had been overlooked, oppressed, or dismissed by the galactic establishment. The Council noticed none of this. They saw only primitive humans playing at civilization in the outer darkness. They ignored the warnings just as they had ignored every warning before. Above Earth, construction continued on massive shipyards. Humanity was building a fleet, not for conquest but for something they understood in their bones: survival. And when the threat came, as they knew it eventually would, humanity would be ready. The first warning came from a mining colony on the edge of Council space. Their distress signal was brief and terrified. "Something is coming. They're eating everything. They're eating the planet itself. Please, someone help." Then silence. The Council sent a patrol to investigate. The patrol found nothing. Not just no survivors, but no planet. The entire world had been consumed down to its metallic core. Even the atmosphere was gone. The only thing remaining was a cloud of organic ships, each one resembling a massive insect moving to the next system. Chancellor Krenak called an emergency session. "What are we facing?" The Chromath scientist who had studied the remains provided the answer. "They are biological ships, living vessels that consume all organic matter and minerals for fuel and reproduction. Our databases have no record of this species. They must be from beyond our galaxy. We're calling them the Devourers. Can we negotiate with them?" asked a Council member. "They are not sapient in any way we understand. They are more like locusts. They consume and reproduce, then move to the next food source. We tried broadcasting messages in 6,000 languages. They ignored all of them. The Devourers moved through Council space like a plague. They hit the industrial world of Tarsus Prime next, consuming 4 billion Chromath citizens in a matter of days. The Council fleet arrived too late. They engaged the swarm and learned a horrible truth. Conventional weapons barely slowed the creatures down. Energy weapons scorched their organic hulls, but they regenerated. Kinetic weapons punched holes through them, but they kept coming. Nuclear weapons worked, but the Devourers adapted quickly. After the third nuclear strike, they developed countermeasures. World after world fell. The Council fleet, designed primarily for policing and peacekeeping, was not prepared for an enemy that fought with such ferocity. The military commanders had grown complacent over centuries of easy dominance over lesser species. Now they faced an enemy that didn't fear them, couldn't be reasoned with, and never stopped coming. Within 6 weeks, 17 council worlds had been completely consumed. Refugee ships clogged the space lanes, fleeing toward the inner systems. Panic spread faster than the Devourers themselves. Chancellor Kreenak made the hardest decision of his long life. Order all species to retreat to their homeworlds. Abandon the outer territories. We will make our stand at the core. But even as he gave the order, he knew it might not be enough. The projections were clear. At their current rate of consumption and reproduction, the Devourers would reach the core worlds within a year. And the Council didn't have the military strength to stop them. A junior diplomat approached Kreenak in his private chambers. Chancellor, we need allies. There is one species we haven't contacted. Who? Kreenak asked, though he already feared the answer. The humans, Chancellor. They have been building their military for 2 decades. Intelligence reports say they have over 5,000 warships, and they have experience fighting against superior forces. Kreenak closed his ancient eyes. The species they had quarantined, dismissed as primitives, rejected from the Council. Now he had to beg them for help. Send a message. Request an immediate meeting. Ambassador Thelkan volunteered to go to Earth. He expected to be turned away, maybe mocked for the Council's past arrogance. Instead, the human response came within an hour. Send your ambassador. We will meet. Thelkan arrived at Earth's orbital station to find it bustling with military activity. Warships of human design filled the docks, being armed and provisioned. Soldiers in combat armor moved with purpose through the corridors. This was not the primitive world the Council had dismissed. This was a military power preparing for war. Secretary General Martinez, who had taken over from Sarah Chen, met Thelkan in a conference room. She was direct. Ambassador, we know about the Devourers. Our long-range scouts have been tracking them since they entered Council space. We know what they're doing, and we know the Council is losing. You're here to ask for our help. Thelkan's pride wanted to argue, but there was no time for dignity. Yes, we need your assistance. We will offer compensation, trade agreements, Council membership, whatever you require. Martinez looked at him for a long moment. We don't want compensation. We'll fight, but not for the Council. We'll fight because if we let the Devourers consume the galaxy, they'll eventually come for us. This is our fight too. You'll help us? Thelkan felt relief wash over him. We'll do more than that. Send us the locations of your refugee fleets. We'll evacuate them to our colony worlds. The high-gravity planets, the radiation zones, the extreme environments that your species can't tolerate. We'll terraform emergency shelters. Your people will be uncomfortable, but they'll be alive. Over the next 2 months, human ships evacuated 3 billion Council citizens from the path of the Devourers. They were transported to human colonies that had been dismissed as worthless death worlds. The refugees huddled in underground shelters, breathing filtered air and taking radiation treatments, but they were safe. Meanwhile, the human military deployed to the front lines. Admiral Rebecca Zhao commanded the human fleet from her flagship, Indomitable. She studied the tactical data from Council engagements and saw the problem immediately. They're fighting wrong, she told her officers. They're using traditional naval tactics against an enemy that doesn't care about casualties. The Devourers will trade 10 ships for 1 Council vessel, because they can replace their losses faster. So how do we fight them? Her tactical officer asked. We fight like we fought the Zarthan. Asymmetric warfare. Hit and run. Make them pay for every meter of space. And we use weapons they won't expect. The first human engagement with the Devourers occurred at the Deneb system. 200 Devourer bioships entered the system, expecting to find a fleeing population. Instead, they found 50 human warships waiting. Admiral Zhao gave the order. All ships execute Protocol Hornet. The human ships scattered, moving in seemingly random patterns. The Devourers pursued, trying to surround them. Then the humans struck. Missiles with nuclear warheads detonated in tight clusters, creating overlapping blasts that the Devourers couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Half their force was vaporized in the first minute, but the humans didn't stop. Ships made kamikaze runs, ramming Devourers at faster than light speeds. The collisions released more energy than nuclear weapons. Entire sections of the swarm were obliterated. When the Devourers adapted and began spreading out, the humans released biological weapons, engineered viruses designed specifically to attack the Devourers' organic hulls. The creatures had no immune systems evolved for such threats. They began dying by the dozens. The remaining Devourers retreated. For the first time since entering the galaxy, they had encountered a species that could hurt them. Back at the Council's emergency headquarters, military analysts watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. One Chromath general spoke what they were all thinking. They fight like demons. They sacrifice their own ships willingly. They use weapons we would consider too dangerous or barbaric. But it's working. Kriath, the Pelgorian scientist who had befriended humans years ago, watched the recordings and understood something the others didn't. They're not fighting for the Council. Look at their tactics. Every engagement is designed to slow the Devourers, to bleed them, to buy time for evacuations. They're fighting to protect the innocent. They're fighting because they believe no species deserves extinction. Over the next year, human forces fought a brutal defensive campaign. They lost 2,000 ships and nearly 1 million soldiers. But the Devourers' advance slowed, then stopped, then reversed. The human tactics of attrition warfare, combined with increasingly sophisticated biological and nuclear weapons, proved devastatingly effective. In the final battle at the Arcturus system, Admiral Zhao faced the largest Devourer concentration yet encountered. 5,000 bioships, enough to consume an entire sector. The human fleet numbered only 800 vessels. Zhao broadcasted her orders on open channels so everyone, including Council observers, could hear. All ships, this is the Admiral. Today we stop them. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because behind us are billions of innocent lives. Human, Chromath, Pelgorian, Zarthan, every species in this galaxy. They're counting on us. So we fight, and we do not yield. For humanity. For the galaxy, attack! The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, only 90 human ships remained functional. But the Devourer swarm was destroyed. The war was over. The galaxy was saved, and everyone knew who had saved it. 5 years after the war ended, the rebuilt council chambers stood on New Sanctuary, a human colony world that had become the temporary capital while the core worlds recovered. The chambers were smaller now, more modest. The galaxy had learned humility through suffering. Today was the memorial ceremony for all those who fell defending the galaxy from the Devourers. Representatives from every species stood in respectful silence as names scrolled across holographic displays. Human names appeared most frequently, but Chromath, Pelgorian, Zarthan, and dozens of other species were listed as well. Ambassador Thelkan, now elderly and bearing scars from a Devourer attack he barely survived, stepped to the podium. His voice shook with emotion as he spoke. We stand here today because of courage. Not just human courage, though they bore the greatest burden, but the courage of every species that stood together against extinction. He paused, looking at the memorial wall where images of the fallen rotated slowly. But I must speak a truth that shames me. This war should never have happened as it did. We had warnings. For 200 years, we received reports about humanity, their rapid advancement, their adaptability, their fierce determination. Species after species tried to tell us that humans were something different, something special, and we ignored every warning. The chamber was silent. Everyone knew what was coming. We dismissed them as primitives because they fought amongst themselves. We called them backwards because they couldn't unify under one government. We labeled them violent and barbaric. But we were wrong. Their diversity was strength. Their willingness to fight was survival instinct. And their violence, which we judged so harshly, was the very thing that saved us all. Thelkan turned to where the human delegation sat. Admiral Zhao was there. Her face scarred from burns suffered when her ship was damaged in the final battle. Secretary General Martinez sat beside her. And in a place of honor sat the families of those humans who had sacrificed themselves in kamikaze runs. Those who had stayed behind on doomed worlds to buy evacuation time. Those who had volunteered for suicide missions to deliver biological weapons. We ignored your warnings about who you were, Thelkan said directly to them. You showed us and we refused to see. You proved yourselves and we refused to acknowledge it. Even when you saved us, we told ourselves it was luck or desperation. But it wasn't. It was who you are. And I am sorry. On behalf of the Council, on behalf of my species, on behalf of all those who dismissed you, I am profoundly sorry. He bowed deeply, a gesture of ultimate respect in Chromath culture. Around the chamber, other representatives began bowing as well. Some species had different gestures of respect, but all of them offered them. The apology was genuine, born of shame and gratitude in equal measure. Admiral Zhao stood and walked to the podium. She looked small next to Thelkan's large frame, but her presence commanded attention. She wore her dress uniform, the medals on her chest representing battles fought and friends lost. Ambassador Thelkan, members of the new Federation, she began. We accept your apology, but I need to be clear about something. We didn't save you because you deserved it. We didn't fight because we wanted gratitude or recognition. We fought because extinction is wrong. Because no species, no matter how different from us, deserves to be consumed. Because the galaxy is better with diversity than without it. She gestured to the memorial wall. Every name on that wall represents someone who understood this. They died not for glory, but for a simple principle. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's who humans are. It's who we've always been. Zhao's voice hardened slightly. But you need to understand something else. You ignored our warnings. You dismissed us. You rejected us. And when danger came, when you needed us, we still helped. We did that because it was right, not because we forgave the insults. The truth is, your council's arrogance nearly cost the galaxy everything. The chamber remained silent. No one dared interrupt. We showed you who we were, Zhao continued. We fought the Zarthan and won. We colonized impossible worlds. We built a fleet. We made allies with species you ignored. Every step of the way we were telling you, we are here, we are capable, we are not to be underestimated. And you chose not to listen. She paused, looking around the chamber. So here's our new warning. We will defend the innocent. We will stand against tyranny. We will protect the weak. And we will never again allow a council or government or power structure to dismiss species as unworthy, because that kind of arrogance is how civilizations die. Secretary General Martinez joined Zhao at the podium. The old council is dissolved. We are building something new. A federation where every species has a voice, not just the powerful ones. Where decisions are made for protection, not profit. Where small colonies on the fringes matter just as much as core worlds. She pulled out a document, actual paper in a digital age, a human tradition. This is the Federation Charter. It's not finished. It will take years to perfect, but it starts with these principles. Mutual defense, equal representation, and zero tolerance for aggression. Every member species contributes what they can and receives protection in return. No species gets ignored. No warnings get dismissed. Over the next hours, representatives debated the charter. Some feared giving humans too much power. Others worried about the cost of defending so many worlds. But slowly, consensus formed. The old way had failed. A new approach was needed. The vote was called. The Federation Charter passed with 93% approval. Humanity was not just a member, but a founding pillar of the new galactic order. After the ceremony, Kriath found Admiral Zhao standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The old scientist approached carefully. Admiral, may I speak with you? Of course, Kriath. You're always welcome. I've been studying human history, Kriath said, trying to understand how you became what you are. And I discovered something. Your species has always been like this. You fought each other constantly. But when outsiders threatened any human tribe, you would unite. You struggled with your own demons, but you would sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You were fractured, yet stronger for it. Zhao nodded. We learned a long time ago that our differences make us stronger. Every human culture brought something unique. Every perspective added value. We fought because we cared enough to argue about what was right. And we survived because when it mattered, we remembered we were all human. The galaxy never understood that, Kriath said. We saw your conflicts and assumed weakness. We should have seen your diversity and recognized strength. You see it now, Zhao replied. That's what matters. The question is, will you remember it? Will the galaxy learn from this, or will history repeat? Kriath was quiet for a long moment. I cannot speak for the galaxy, but I will remember, and I will teach others to remember. Your species saved us not with superior weapons or tactics, though you had those. You saved us by refusing to accept that any species deserved extinction. That compassion, combined with your willingness to fight, that is the lesson we must remember. Years passed. Human ships patrolled the borders of Federation space, watching for any return of the Devourers or any new threat. New Sanctuary became the permanent capital, a symbol that power could exist on the edges, not just at the center. On Earth, in the rebuilt city of Geneva, a monument stood. It was a simple column of black stone, listing every species that had ignored humanity's warnings. followed by every species that had heeded those warnings and survived. The inscription at the base read, "They did not listen, but we saved them anyway. May future generations learn what past ones refused to see." That strength comes in many forms, and the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not a warrior species, but a species with nothing left to lose. Admiral Zhao, retired now and teaching at the Federation Naval Academy, would bring her students to this monument every year. She would read the inscription and ask them the same question, "What do you see here?" The answers varied, but she always told them the truth. This monument isn't about us being right. It's about the cost of being ignored. Millions died because the Council didn't take our warnings seriously. Billions more would have died if we hadn't fought anyway. Remember this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The galaxy didn't, and it nearly ended everything. Above Earth, construction continued on the shipyards. Humanity had learned its lesson too. The galaxy was not always peaceful. Threats could come from anywhere, and the price of survival was eternal vigilance, but now at least they didn't stand alone. The Federation stood together, and if another threat came, they would face it as they had faced the Devourers, united, determined, and willing to pay any price to protect the innocent. The galaxy had finally listened. They had learned what happens when you ignore warnings about humanity, and they had learned something else, that the species they once dismissed as primitive had become the guardians of them all. The stars shone above New Sanctuary, peaceful for now. But in the shipyards and training centers on colony worlds and border stations, humanity and its allies prepared. Because the greatest lesson of the war was simple. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of those willing to defend it, and humanity would always be willing to defend it.